Hello, hello. I hope everyone is fantastic on this Mexico Monday. So one of the questions I get most often is how are people actually making money while living in Mexico? And not like the Instagram version of making money, but what are they doing in real life to earn money to live abroad? Because moving abroad sounds amazing until you realize that for many people, you're not able to bring your US job with you. And so you have to figure out what else you can do to sustain this life that you want to live. And so today, I want to talk about it. If we have not met, I am Dr. Raquel. I've lived all across Europe, and my family now has residency in Mexico. And so I want to share some of the things that I've learned through the process, but also specifically speak to what I'm learning as we are preparing for Mexico, what I'm doing as we are preparing for Mexico, and what I did to get us to this point. And so one of the things that I've learned is this, which is that moving abroad is not just about where you live, but it's also about how to sustain that life that you want to live once you get there. And so the first thing I want to clear up is that most expats living in Mexico, they are not working locally in Mexico. Okay. So they are either working for a remote US based company, they are running their own businesses, they are freelancing and consulting, or they're living off of their savings, retirement, investments, whatever. Okay because local salaries in Mexico are going to traditionally and typically and more than likely be much lower than salaries in the US. So when many people say, "Oh, I'm living comfortably in Mexico," they might be. Hopefully they are. But most often it's because their income is actually coming from outside of Mexico. Okay. So this is where I see people get into trouble where they either think, oh, I'll just get a job once I get to Mexico, or I'll find work in Mexico. I speak Spanish. But also just remember, like, whatever that work is going to be for doing the same thing that you would be doing in the US, the amount of income you're going to get will be much lower. Now, is that better or is that worse? I don't know. Because if you were doing that same job in the US with a higher income, you also would have higher expenses. And so the goal is to be able to have higher income and lower expenses, which is often why people are moving to Mexico from the beginning. Okay. So you want to make sure that you don't get into trouble in this way by focusing on location, housing, aesthetics, but not really fully answering the how am I funding my life consistently so that before your move, you want to be completely clear about where your income is coming from, whether it's remote income, making sure that it's stable. Are you building a business? Are you transitioning between income streams? Do you get like some from one place, some from another place? Um, because the move becomes a lot smoother when your income is already working for you because you don't have to have that inconsistency and that thought of like where is this going to come from, and you definitely do not want to be broke in another country. Okay. One thing that is important too and often misunderstood in terms of your visa is that your visa matters when it comes to your income. So if you did, let's say you already have a business, you're doing business in Mexico and you just kind of want to transition it over there, and you know that it can earn the income that you need to sustain you, you also then need to make sure that the visa that you're receiving will allow you to be able to work locally. So, depending on your status, you may not be authorized to work locally. I've shared this in the past, but this happened for myself in Germany and for my husband in Belgium. When we moved to Germany, I was told, sure, you can get your visa because your husband is there. And then I arrived in Germany and they were like, girl, please, absolutely not. You will have 90 days to find a job or you will be no longer living in Germany. And then with my husband in Belgium, we got his visa under family reunification, not knowing that that meant he could not work And so, and also for 6 months, he couldn't leave the country. And so, yeah, we learned some of these things the hard way for sure. But just because you are receiving a visa, you need to understand what the parameters are of what you can do, even in terms of income with that visa. You may also need to show a proof of income to get the visa, or you may need to structure your work in a certain way. So, again, this is not just about paperwork in terms of your visa, but your visa and your income streams also need to align. Okay, so what we have is economic solvency visas. And so for that, we're basically saying we're not planning to work in Mexico. We are going to continue the income that we currently have prayerfully, and that income will sustain us while we're living in Mexico. So Mexico can be more affordable, but affordability is not necessarily a strategy. Like I hear people say, I'll just move abroad and figure it out because it's cheaper. And I do want to just gently push back on that because a lower cost of living can support your plan, but it shouldn't be your plan. Okay. Because you still want to make sure you have stability, consistency, peace of mind. You're not full of anxiety and stress because you're like, I have to pay my rent. I don't have any money. I have to get this $600, which in the US, maybe you can go do something quickly and earn $600. You might not be able to do that in Mexico. So you definitely want to make sure that there's a plan. And people who thrive in Mexico, they're not just like chasing lower costs. They are intentional about how they earn, how they're structuring their life, their lifestyle, and how those things are going to work together, which is so important. Okay, so when you are moving to Mexico, you're not just thinking like, where should I live? You also want to see I can live in this place that is like the same amount as what my rent or my mortgage is in the US. And but it's like 3 times bigger and so much more spacious and newer appliances. But also ensuring like how will I fund that life and pay for all of those things, even though they're lower cost, how will I sustain that? If this is a lifestyle I choose. Because you don't want to just bring over extra stress that you don't necessarily have to have just because you're thinking, oh, yeah, I can afford that. And then you really can't. Okay. So if you're in that place and you're trying to figure it out, your location, your income, your options, that is exactly what I help people do. And so I'd be happy to help you kind of think through what your situation is and how you can figure out a way to make a plan, or I can help you make a plan of how you will be able to sustain things while you are in Mexico or whatever other country that you're planning to move to. And so, one thing that I have done, and just to offer some, like I'm very much a futuristic thinker. And so I am always thinking about, okay, so if this happens, then what will my next step be? And so thinking of that, I decided that I have a master's in teaching English. And so I decided that I wanted to try some of these like teaching English platforms to see if it's something that I can actually earn money with. And I have. So I have been teaching English on Preply. I personally absolutely love teaching English. And so it is so much fun. But you don't have to have a master's in TESOL to teach English. You don't have to have anything to teach on these sites. You pretty much just have to be, well, it's encouraged that you're a native English speaker. And if you are, then you can teach English to whoever. Now, of course, if you're trash, you will receive ratings. Your students can rate you, but I'm sure you won't be. And so, Preply is the app that I teach English through. And so I have started doing that like sometime last year. I started doing that just so that I can begin to build my students and the number of students that I have so that should I want to do this or if I'm able to financially live off of my teaching income when we get to Mexico, and that's all I have to do, then that would be great. And if not, then if we need a little bit of a buffer or things are not flowing as they were while I was physically in the US, that I will have something that can give us some income while we're figuring it out. And so that is also what I would highly recommend is that, you figure out what are some of those things that you can maybe start doing now that can help you fill in the gaps, either while you're figuring it out or to just fill in the gaps just in case you need to figure it out later so that you have something to fall back on. So if maybe teaching English is not your thing, there are like apps and websites and virtual things for everything. And so most of the things I see right now are like tech things. Obviously, I'm more in the education space, and so that's not for me. But I do also have a blog post for like education jobs abroad. If you are more in the education space, I have taught abroad before, and I have taught different languages abroad before. I've taught at universities, I've taught at language schools, I've taught at like adult learning centers, I've taught in law firms abroad, like taught lawyers English, um, taught like administrative support within offices English. And so I have done a lot of different things abroad to earn income. And you just want to make sure that you're able to support yourself where you are, that it aligns with what either you want to be doing, you enjoy doing, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want something that pays you so that you can work 20 hours a week and frolic for the rest of it. And that is also perfectly fine. It is about figuring out how to support the lifestyle that you want. So yeah, so that's all I have for y'all today. You have heard my plan of sustainability. I'm not sure if I shared the other part actually. So, what I have as a buffer is Preply. But what I also will be doing in terms of like my actual income earner during this time is I have two businesses. And so with one of my business, well, both of my businesses, I can work from anywhere. And in terms of what does work from anywhere mean, let me explain that a little bit. Because a lot of times I meet with people and they're like, "Oh, I'll just do my job. I work from home. I'll just do my job like from wherever I go." That is not necessarily a thing. You definitely need to make sure with your employer that they will allow that. And 98% of the time, it's due to taxes. So if they're not paying taxes in a specific country, you are not going to be able to relocate to that specific country, which is why you have some places that just have offices in certain locations, is because they're paying taxes in those locations. So you really want to make sure you have something that allows you to work from anywhere. That can be remote employment with a company if your company lets you go. That can be freelancing and consulting, teaching and tutoring online, like I just mentioned, running your own business. But you really want to make sure it is work from anywhere. And not all work from anywhere jobs are created equal. Some are like, you can start now, you get paid weekly, no like background checks. Others are like more flexible, more scalable, more aligned with like long-term employment. Some are like contract jobs, they're just for like 3 weeks. But you really just want to first make sure that whatever you're doing, it is actually work from anywhere and not just like a work from home position. Okay. With Preply, like for example, there's another that's called Cambly. If you have something that you can teach, there are like apps or websites for all of those. It just is about being consistent, being willing to start and getting it done. And so, like, even with consistency, like, for example, we have spring break coming up. I had conferences. I had actual like consulting appointments that paid me a lot more than Preply did. And so I blocked my calendar for those things. And when you have like a relationship with your students, they'll be like, we usually meet on Thursdays at 10. You haven't had Thursdays at 10 available for 2 Thursdays. And so consistency is also something that is pretty important, especially with things like that when you're also building relationships at the same time as like teaching things. But again, Preply has really been helpful. So, for example, one thing I will also share about Preply is with my visa fees. Preply allows you to get paid different ways, and they're used to having teachers from around the world. And so, what I did was for like months, all of my Preply payments, all of the income I received for Preply, I just left it in my Preply account. transferred it over to my Mexican account and paid for all the things that I need to pay for through my Preply income. And so it was definitely a great financial buffer just to be able to kind of alleviate some of those visa and travel expenses when it was time for us to actually go to Mexico and pay for all the things. But how I am sustaining income longer term is again in my businesses. So the work that I do is twofold. So one is I do strengths-based consulting. I am a Gallup certified strengths coach, and through my work in leadership development and coaching, I support individuals and organizations in leveraging their strengths, leading more effectively, building inclusive and high performing environments and teams. And so with this work, it is very location independent. It is very much relationship driven, which I can do with people via Zoom. And it's also very scalable. And so it's something that I've been doing for the last several years. And I plan to continue doing this while I'm in Mexico. And I do it both virtually and in person in the US. And the other thing, as you all know, is I teach others how to live their best life abroad. And that's where this comes in. So I build workshops, I have one on one calls, clarity calls with people. I also have content on YouTube, podcasts, blogs, social media. I have community spaces. We have a Best Life Abroad tribe. We have Best Life Abroad in person meetups. And so all of this is really centered around helping people move abroad with intention, make aligned decisions to how they want their life to be, and build lives that actually feel good once they get there. And this is very important to me because I don't just want to move abroad, I want to help others do it as well. And so for me, the bigger picture is kind of all these different funnels and streams that will then help me to be able to have the income that I'm looking for. And also just give me a starting point and a plan. Like, I don't know the future. I cannot predict the future. The only thing I can do is just build a pathway to sustainability and hope that it works. That's really all you can do. And so I'm starting with just like accessible income like Preply to build a little financial buffer. I have my two other forms of businesses that I will continue working, and I'm putting all of those things together to hopefully be able to provide what it is that we need. So, and of course, my husband will be working as well. So together, we're hoping that we will be fine. Okay. So, yeah, I just want to share all that with you. I hope that it is helpful. I hope that it provides you the information that you're looking for in terms of how other people and just for me specifically, like I talk to people all the time about their moves abroad, as you know, through our Best Life Abroad, Not Your Average Travel podcast. And so I wanted to also share specifically my plan for supporting our move to Mexico. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you need help, of course, I'm here, www.bestlifeabroad.com. And let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. All right. Bye.